Welcome everyone, and we'll bring the meeting to order and get things started and remind everybody that the meetings are web streamed, so they are live, and you can certainly watch them afterwards by going to the town website. So prior to the open session, council met for a brief closed session. It was moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that pursuant to Section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, claim against the municipality regarding the 2018 election and a town property matter, and the receiving of advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, claim against the municipality regarding the 2018 election and town property matter. That was carried and done. Is there any additions or prioritization of the agenda? I might suggest that item 10.3.3 be moved forward. And one on library, 951, and that possible 951 be brought forward. So may I have a mover and seconder for the agenda? Councillor McCann, Councillor Burton, that the council agenda for May 21st, 2019 be approved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to take a few minutes to hold a public meeting to hear any interested persons with regard to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 of the Planning Act. May I have a mover and seconder for the resolution to adjourn the regular meeting? Councillor Horn, Councillor McCann. Do we now adjourn the regular meeting and declare the public meeting open? All in favor? That's carried. Ms. Johnson, could you explain how the public was notified of WEH Development Phase 2 Development Limited?
Worship, notice was given by prepaid first-class mail to the required prescribed agencies and property owners within 120 meters, posted on the property, and was placed on the town's website.
Good. Mr. Algie, can you explain the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Certainly. The applicant has requested to amend the R2 and Special Provision 49 and 50 zones to permit single detached dwellings, semi-detached, and triplex dwellings in the form of row houses, 3-unit row houses that is, reduce the minimum lot frontage for singles from 15 to 12 meters, for semi-detached from 10 to 7, and the lot frontage for 3-unit row houses to be 5.8 meters per unit. Reduce the minimum lot area for a semi from 300 square meters to 240, and for a 3-unit row dwelling to 190 square meters per unit. Reduce the interior side yard to 1.3 meters for a semi-detached, and end units for a 3-unit row house will be 1.3. 0 will be for the inside units. Increase the lot coverage for semi-detached and 3-unit row houses from 30% to 40%, which includes accessory structures, and also rezone the rear portion of the lots abutting the ravine railway to an open space zone. The property is vacant, currently undergoing site alteration at the end of Winifred Avenue, and described as lots 21 through 49 and blocks 51 through 54 of 42M 648.
Okay, thank you. This time, does anyone wish to come forward and speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? If so, please identify yourself by name and your address. If you want to. Okay. All right. Then, at this time, then, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Again, please come forward and identify yourself by name and address. I'm out here. Yep. Yep. Have a seat.
I'm Al Kinnear, 14 Avery Court. I'm against the bylaw being changed due to the fact that I think it is going to be pretty crowded, especially with the 3-unit row house going down to 5.8 meters. That appears to me to only be 16, 18 feet wide per unit. Understand that it's planned to have parking in front of these units. I propose that should go to 7 meters per unit. The density of these buildings is too much, I believe, and I think we shouldn't change the bylaw unless you go with a single detached, maybe could go to 14, and the semi-detached to 9. Other than that, I have no qualms. I know Mr. Hall, and he was around and showed me the plans, and I certainly give him credit for developing this property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Nope. Okay. Mr. Algie, have there been any letters received as a result of this notice?
Yes, there has. 2 letters so far. The one letter was submitted by nearby residents who was opposed. They feel that if the frontage is going over 50 meters, there won't be enough space for snow storage. They know that their lot is 60 feet wide. In the winter, they don't have enough room for snow storage. They attached a picture for council's consideration, which will be part of the R&R. Also, CN Rail submitted comments today, general comments, which will be discussed in greater detail during the report. But much of it is rehashing what is already in the original subdivision agreement.
Okay, very good, thank you. The public should contact staff or check the town's website to see when this amendment will come back for a decision. Council at its discretion may approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If so, it must either circulate notice of passing of the bylaw or give notice in the local press. Objections to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk within 20 days from the date such notice is given, which objections will be forwarded to the local planning appeal tribunal. If an appeal is submitted and the appellant has not provided council with an oral or written submission before the passing of the bylaw, the local planning appeal tribunal may choose to dismiss the appeal. Thank you, everyone. May I have a mover and seconder to declare the public meeting closed? Councillor Burton, Councillor Horn. We now declare the public meeting closed. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, may I have a mover and seconder with regard to the minutes? Councillor Burton, Councillor McCann, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 7th, 2019 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Questions of staff? Councillor McCann, then Councillor Borneman.
Yes, this would be for Chief Thompson. It cost me $10 for being a little nosy over the weekend. I was traveling on Pine Drive and about to turn onto Bow Street, and admittedly, I saw the flashing lights over towards Walmart and headed in that direction, only to find out that it cost me $10 to get through the boot toll. So, but all for good cause. Maybe you can fill us in on on how well the fundraiser went. I understand that the funds go towards defibrillators.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, EMS was set up at numerous locations throughout the region this weekend. It's a great weekend. They've done this for a number of years now, and the goal is to raise money to buy public access defibrillators, as well as money gets utilized to fund training for people in the use of public access defibrillators. Defibrillators save lives. When someone has a heart attack or problems of that nature and their heart stops or goes into defibrillation, the defibrillators, if they can access a person fast enough, do an excellent job of setting everything straight and allowing that person to recover. And there are many times throughout the year that our public access defibrillators are utilized, as well as the paramedics getting on scene and being able to use the defibrillators that they have on the ambulances to save lives. So all these funds go towards funding those programs. The EMS personnel are volunteering their time out there on the weekend like this to raise those funds, and they volunteer their time to run those programs. So I want to thank everyone who supported them over the weekend, and just kudos to them for doing this to help everyone within the district, have a high quality of life.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes, good job. Please do thank the crew. Councillor Borneman, you had your hand up next.
I did. This question, I think, will start with Mr. Harris. I'm not sure if it'll finish there. A couple weeks ago, we became aware that through the provincial budget that we would be responsible for extra monies with respect to EMS services. It seems like daily there's a drip where the province, 20 years ago they called it downloading. I'm not sure what they're calling it now, but it seems like almost daily there's an announcement that municipal taxpayers are going to be required to pick up an extra tab. So my question is, Mr. Harris, do we have a handle on this? Do we have any idea what the bottom line impact is for the town of Parry Sound and the ratepayer here? Where is this going, and will it require us to potentially reopen a budget discussion and look for further cuts?
Through the mayor to Councillor Borneman, a couple of things or thoughts I can share. From a direct impact on the town, there's only a couple of things that are specific enough to say we're going to be impacted. And one is cuts to the land ambulance budget, as you alluded to. The chief is looking at that, or is considering at that. The impact is $166,000 for land ambulance. Now that's going to be shared with the other municipalities, but that's a change from what we had built our budget on. So that's an impact that we know. The other thing we know is, I believe it was in March, unannounced and unexpected, the province gave many millions of dollars to a lot of the municipalities in Ontario, if not all of them. The town received a check for $668,000. It was out of the blue, unexpected, and you wonder, okay, where's the left shoe? Attached to that letter, there were no requirements. We could do whatever the town wants to do with that money, but the letter itself referred to doing modernization. And that was kind of a heads up on you. Start looking at technology, looking at ways to maybe collaborate with your neighbors, other municipalities, the private sector perhaps, but look at ways to be more efficient through the use of technology or other things. And this money can be used for that. So council's aware that we've got that money, and we've had discussions at the staff levels. How do we deal with these funds? What should we use them for? We've started to take a look at all the technology projects that the staff wanted to undergo, take on in 2019 and perhaps beyond. So we're going to look and see if there's any of those that have some savings, and we'll be bringing a report back to council as to how should we proceed with these funds to get the biggest bang for the buck and save perhaps dollars in the future. Those are the two things that are specific. Beyond that, we do expect other downloading. The magnitude and what specific items they might be, we're not aware. Probably the greater impact, though, is a lot of indirect implications. Consolidating the health into 10 regional health units. That's going to have an implication on perhaps healthcare and the delivery of services and other cuts across all the agencies that the province provides its services through. As their budgets get reduced, not only the town but the community is going to feel implications. So we don't know what all those implications might be, but that's probably the bigger impact. We don't have a lot of control over it and a lot of say, but nonetheless, some of that responsibility may just naturally fall to the municipality to pick up some pieces that the province isn't there to take care of. Just a couple of things in terms of what the town's doing. I think we're very fortunate that our mayor is the president of AMO. AMO in some ways is the first line of defense, if you like. There's a lot of consultation takes place between AMO and the province before they undertake certain initiatives. They don't always listen, but there's a chance to at least amend and change the direction the province is going. So we're fortunate. Obviously, he's not just representing the town of Parry Sound, but what happens in other communities is going to be the same as what could happen in Parry Sound. So it's an important voice to have. We encourage all our staff to get involved with the various professional associations. Our manager of taxations is involved in the Ontario Tax Collectors Association. So a lot of times they get consulted on legislation as it impacts taxation. One of the things the province is doing is looking at the property tax assessment system and looking at maybe changing it. So I expect that the Property Taxpayer Association is going to be making comments, and our staff is on the board. So we have a front row seat, and if other staff, we encourage them to get involved in their associations to bring forward issues to the province. As I mentioned, we're also having discussions on how to best use those modernization funds that we got from the province.
Yes, Councillor Borneman.
So as a follow-up, I guess this one's for you, Mr. Mayor. Has AMO taken a position with respect to all of this, or where do you see this going in the next few months?
Well, I think when we received the funding from the province, that 600,000, I think I was cautiously aware that there might be something following along behind that and might have made a comment. So as far as AMO goes, AMO has been reaching out to the government on numerous occasions to ask the government to consult. And when you're not consulted with, it's really hard to have any input into what's going on. Now, that's not to say that they haven't consulted on certain issues, because they have. And there have been a number of things that they have brought to our attention, and AMO has commented on, like the new housing plan and some other stuff. In fact, AMO is in Queen's Park or at the government offices every day. Some staff member is discussing a particular issue. But there are certain things that have gone on, like the ambulance, public health, where there has been no consultation as to what the sort of government's intentions were in this particular case. So it's really hard to have comment or make suggestions on something when there is no consultation on that. Now, that's not to say that the government didn't say, they were looking at an overall review, but that could be anything. You know, it's really appreciated when the government does come up with a plan, then they bring it forward to AMO. AMO's, you know, policy advisors and staff can take a look at it and, you know, tell them where things are going to work and where things are not going to work, and how to make things more palatable with municipalities. But when that doesn't happen, then you're caught. You know, all of a sudden you find out that, you know, you're going to be getting less money for land ambulance, and it doesn't mean, I mean, the amount of money that we're going to be getting is 2017 levels. So it's 2 years behind. We also don't know whether we're going to be picking up the extra tab for First Nations and unorganized. And we haven't had an answer on that yet. So, you know, you get a statement in a letter, and it's a big surprise to everybody. So AMO is taking the position right now of, you know, looking at all of this, trying to find out the cost impacts on municipalities right across the province, and dealing with the government and saying, come on, give us some information that we can work with to bring this forward. So, you know, if you want a suggestion, the suggestion would be, let's write a letter to the government supporting the fact that they, you know, if they're going to bring something forward, that they consult with AMO so there can be a meaningful discussion to find out what's going to work and what the impact is going to be on municipalities, with all of a sudden just not just dumping it out there. So, you know, it's not just land ambulance. It's public health. It's libraries. You know, there's a variety of different impacts that are hitting, you know, in a variety of different areas and sectors. Tourism's going to be affected as well. You know, we just keep going on. So my suggestion would be that let's write a letter to the government saying, you know, the government needs to consult and be stepping forward to have those meaningful discussions with AMO to make sure that, you know, impacts and, you know, proper notice is given to municipalities. You know, this whole bit with, you know, the government's year end being what, May 30th, and then ours, you know, December 31st. Their budget timing is totally out with regard to ours. So when you make changes within that, their fiscal year, we've already done our budget. We've already set our budget. Our taxpayers are expecting to know what they're going to be paying for 2019. Not all of a sudden a big surprise with a big comeback saying, oh, you got to open your wallets even further. So I think that's what we have to do. The message needs to be sent to the government. They need to consult. And yes, that's my little rant. Yes, Councillor Borneman.
So can we, is it appropriate now to ask that direction be given?
Sure. Yep. Seconder? Councillor Keith? Okay. All in favor? Okay. I think Mr. Harris and I can probably come up with something or whatever and get that off to the government and make sure that it's copied to, well, our local MPP, and I think also Minister Clark from Municipal Affairs and Housing. I think Vic Fideli, Minister of Finance. And it should also be sent to Treasury Board, I think, as well. I think, you know, it's especially Finance and Treasury Board. They need to know that they're impacting municipalities in the midst of what the municipalities have already set for their budgets. Yes, Councillor Borneman.
I'd sort of like to see this come back here in a, you know, in a resolution form,
Sure,
so that can be distributed through AMO and the like.
Yep. It can be. Sure. Next meeting? Okay. All right. Anything further? Any more questions of staff? Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Worship, there are 3 items of correspondence. The first one is from Tom and Leanne Piddington. It's regarding concerns with water pooling on private property, their property and other private properties, from a plugged culvert, ostensibly the town's culvert. The concerns documented in this correspondence have previously been forwarded to the Director of Public Works, and any further action is at the direction of Council. The second item is from Kyle Boyko on behalf of Inspire Tech Canada Corporation. Inspire Tech is hosting the 2nd annual Spring 2019 Technology Expo on Friday, May 31st at the Stocky Centre, where high school students will be exposed to presentations on STEM career path options, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. Inspire Tech is requesting financial support to bring back the event in spring 2020. So this item is being referred to the Finance Department to include with other requests to be brought forward at the end of the year or beginning of 2020 for the 2020 budget process. The third item is from the Township of Essa. It's a request to support circulation of Essa Public Library's petition requesting reinstatement of funding to the Ontario Library Service, the North and the South, agencies to a minimum of 2017 to 2018 funding levels. And a resolution related to this issue is on the agenda as item 951.
I'd like to make a suggestion or a recommendation that the Piddington letter be forwarded to staff for a report.
Mic off. How soon can that come back?
Your Worship, I'm hopeful that we have a report to council the second meeting in June,
Okay, all right,
1 month from now.
okay, all right. All right, so we come to the deputations and presentations portion of tonight's council meeting. Deputations are held to a maximum of 10 minutes each, including questions of clarification from council. Deputations are also subject to the same rules of conduct as members of council, that no one shall speak disrespectfully or use offensive words or insulting expressions against any member of council, staff, or another member of the public. And please speak clearly and approximately 1 foot in front of the microphone for best results. Our first deputation is Shauna Woods with regard to concerns with planned removal and anchor from Georgian Bay. Welcome, Shauna. Thank you.
If it's all right with you, I'm going to stand when I speak because I feel like I can't see anybody up here. Good evening, Parry Sound, Town Councillors, and Mayor McGarvey. My name's Shauna Woods. I'm an avid scuba diver. I run the local dive club. I plan and put into action the underwater cleanups in the area. I'm a PADI assistant instructor, and I'm currently 2 weekends away from being a PADI open water instructor. I'm here tonight to bring forth an issue that is very dear to myself, my family, and my scuba diving friends. On May 8th, an article was in the Parry Sound Beacon Star in regards to surfacing of the last anchor from the Atlantic shipwreck, and we, along with the hundreds of others that I've spoken to, had the opportunity to meet and who have signed a petition for me, are strongly against this project. So I have a question for you. Does anybody here know how many anchors are currently sitting on a lawn somewhere in Parry Sound, or do you know about the history of where these anchors came from and what happened to those ships? I have asked hundreds of locals these questions over the last couple weeks, and not a single person could tell me where they came from, let alone how many are currently adorning a grassy lawn in the limits of Parry Sound. So I'm going to answer those questions for you. In the town limits, there are currently 10 anchors sitting on grassy lawns. We've got 3 at the Wabano Beach, one's from the Wabano Wreck, one's from the Atlantic Wreck, one's from the Seattle Wreck. We currently have 5 sitting at the Coast Guard base. 3 are from the Coast Guard ships themselves, and 2 have absolutely no known history to them. There's one in front of the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve, and there's one in front of the Town and Country Motel, both who have no history known. Whether this is from the time that they were pulled up, from a lack of care of the history, or a lack of knowledge and documentation, the story of those 4 anchors that have no story at all has been lost. The point is, these anchors all sit on a lawn in a park where very few pay attention to them, very few pay attention to the history, and all historical significance is lost because an anchor sitting on a lawn means absolutely nothing compared to an anchor left in the water with its shipwreck. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history about the Atlantic. The Atlantic was originally built and called the Manitoulin, and 20 people lost their lives 2 years after it was built when the ship caught fire. Now, because the ship was only 2 years old, they decided that the hull was salvageable. They pulled it up, they rebuilt the ship, and named it the Atlantic. Now again, the ship caught fire a second time. Luckily, nobody perished on this shipwreck. There was also a sister shipwreck made at the same time called the Pacific, and that one burnt as well, so bad run for those ships. Although the anchor is not located directly with the shipwreck itself, it is a part of the shipwreck, and seeing as there's only one of these anchors left in the water, we want the second anchor to be left where it lays, to be protected as an official dive site, and to be a linking dive to the wreck itself. For those of you that don't dive, words can never express what coming across an anchor means, okay? It's the most amazing and just awe-inspiring feeling. I've got pictures of my stepdaughter diving with anchors, just the amazement on her face, and my 3 kids here, starting this summer, they can start diving, and I want them to be able to experience that as well. With the summer months coming and my instructor course almost over, I want to be able to take my students out to dive on this anchor and to dive on the wreck itself and teach them about the history of Parry Sound, at least some of our maritime history. I want my dive club to be able to experience it because no matter how many times we dive on one site, you never get bored of seeing everything down there. I want to be able to take videos and photos, and I want to be able to show people where the anchor lays, where the shipwreck is, and not have to have it pulled up on grass in order to do so. I want it left there so all the dive clubs that we associate with, those who come here every summer to dive with us, the ones who rent rooms, who buy food, who buy their dive gear here and spend money in our town, continue to increase the tourism revenue. They can enjoy a new dive site and learn even more of what makes our town. And at least with it underwater, where it rightfully belongs, I know that it's going to be preserved correctly. So I've got some photos to show you. These are the anchors that are currently sitting around town, and as you can see, they are in rough shape. There's absolutely no preservation to them. Oh, sorry, it skipped a few. The ones that sit at the Wabano Beach are no longer even on their platforms. They're sinking into the lawn. There's also, like I said, the Atlantic anchor here, and part of the arm itself and the ball that marks where the anchor came from has been cut off. After speaking with every organization I could possibly think of, I will show you now how a lack of preservation requirements that these anchors are supposed to have, but yet they currently don't receive, and the fear I have of the new one that's going to be potentially mistreated. These are words from Andrea Williams, an archaeology review officer from the Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Sport. A license application proposing the removal of artifacts from a marine archaeological site requires a detailed conservation plan created with a conservator for the removal and long-term preservation of the artifacts and confirmation from a public institution committed to permanently caring for the artifacts. A proposal to place artifacts in a park would need considerable documentation of how long-term preservation would be achieved this way, as well as documentation of who would take on the permanent responsibility for this preservation. The permit that the town of Parry Sound submitted last year was lacking in all of this. These anchors that I just showed you, they're not preserved. Being painted or trim-cladded is not preservation. You guys are sitting here talking about money when it comes to the EMS services and everything. I think the $2,500 that you've put aside in the budget could go to much better services than this. And seeing as speaking with the Tobermory Council and all their artifact preservations, They currently spend about $40,000 to $50,000 to properly preserve an anchor there. After numerous phone calls, I've knocked on strangers' doors to inquire about the project. I've been avoided, I've been lied to, and I've been misled. I was finally able to speak with the gentleman who located this anchor 3 years ago. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but this has been known about for 3 years, and it's only been public knowledge for the last 2 weeks. Kurt Gray, the gentleman who found it, after speaking with me for a while on the phone and listening to all my objections for this, has stated that if the town of Parry Sound agrees to leave the anchor alone and to discontinue this removal process, he will meet with me in Parry Sound. He will give me the coordinates, all the documentation and research he has, and he will help me register it as a protected dive site in Georgian Bay. So tonight I'm here to ask of you, on behalf of all of us who care, to leave the Atlantic's anchor alone and leave it where it lays, to allow me to have it as a protected dive site, to allow the dive industry of this town that we work so hard to increase, to have another aspect to it, to allow those of us who enjoy the history of our town and who also enjoy and love diving, to be able to continue to enjoy this anchor where it rightfully belongs, and to allow the children of our town to dive an anchor that has meaning and significance to our area.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope, none at the moment. Okay. Anyway, thank you for your brief, and we appreciate you doing this. Council will have to discuss this at some point. Okay, thank you. I'll give you that, so you've got a copy for the staff. Our next deputation is Renata Purcell and Deborah Jones, Strings Across the Sky. Welcome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Renata Purcell. I am a volunteer at Strings Across the Sky for about a year. It's a program developed originally for Indigenous people, and it empowers youth to be self-confident and have a love of music and be proud of themselves. So with no more talking about myself, and I'm going to go to the Executive Artistic Director, Deborah Jones, and she's going to continue with what the program is all about. And we run a music program all year. In the summer, we do a camp, and it's at the Friendship Center, or the Hub now, I guess? Both. Yeah, it's, we're asking for a donation. We need $2,000 to continue this program and to keep this up and running for the summer camp. So I'll let Deborah continue.
Thanks. Thanks, Renata. Okay. So good evening. I'm Deb Jones, and I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of Strings Across the Sky Foundation. We are a registered charity, and the organization was founded in 1989 by my late Aunt Andrea Hansen, who was a member of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, violinist. They visited the far north on a tour back in 1987, and they really they discovered a very rich fiddling tradition and heritage that goes back about 400 years in Indigenous communities across Canada. So her passion and vision was to continue this program, to rekindle it and to bring it back, because it had been dying out and really contributed to the wellness of the communities. It had been dying out because of residential schools and relocation and broken communities, and you know, most of you would know that history. So the purpose of this program is to rekindle the heritage of fiddle music, but more importantly, it's really to address the special needs and well-being of our at-risk Indigenous children and youth in communities. So by being inclusive to Indigenous and non-Native children, we build cross-cultural bridges in the community, and empathy and compassion among both our Indigenous youth and our non-Native youth, and we see that year after year and time after time. This has a very unique teaching method. It's an award-winning method, and my aunt developed it, which is great for kids because it immediately allows them to have self-esteem and confidence and to actually master the violin and instrument very quickly, and it's lots of fun, and it's called a spoon fiddle. So we actually teach them the first day or a few hours on a spoon fiddle, and it's amazing. So we have all kinds of musical exercises that my aunt developed. So this is the spoon, and we teach them all the mechanics of the violin, and then this is the piece of doweling, that is the bow, and it works magic. So by the end of the week or a session, they can play 10 or 11 songs, and since 2004, we were invited into the Parry Sound community, and in partnership with the Festival of Sound, as well as the Parry Sound Friendship Center. So in 2004, we began a one-week camp for the children, a weekly camp, and we get about 30 children. We try to keep our spaces mostly for Indigenous children, but it's inclusive, so we have quite a good combination of both Native and non-Native children through that one-week camp. It's been running annually for 15 years, with only 2 years break in that, and that was due to lack of funding. But we are on again for this year, and we do perform at the Festival of Sound for at the end of that week. So it's a great opportunity for all the children, and it brings the families in the community, Indigenous families in the community that would not necessarily come and see the Stockley Centre or feel comfortable participating in a lot of non-Indigenous community events. So I joined my aunt to teach in 2008, and I moved up here and lived in Shawanaga, and we also taught in Indigenous communities across Canada. This is a recognized program. She received, the program has received many recognitions, including the Order of Canada. So I knew for many years I've had this incredible vision and recognized that we had a really big need in this community for a weekly teaching program for these children. Not just once a year, but something that would help them on an ongoing basis, that they could come to and learn music. And so I had a vision, and we were able to, with a lot of people like Renata, volunteers, and private donors, launch a program in February of this year, and we call it Naja Bigagun. And we also have a partnership with the Hub, so they've donated their space for a year, for their first year to start. So we started in the middle of February, a weekly teaching program on Mondays for children ages 6 to 14. And they come, and it's been growing and building. So Naja Bigagun is the Ojibwe word for strings that sing when you glide your fingers along them. There's no direct translation for violin, but when the Ojibwe people saw the violins, they said it's like a strings that sing. So that's the name of the program. And so we've been running since February. It's a 17-week till the end of June. And I based it on a prototype of several of our other successful weekly programs, but one particular one is in North Bay at the North Bay Indigenous Friendship Center. It's been running for 6 years. So some of those children who have been really in at-risk and difficult situations have been playing the violin for 6 years, and they go out and they play in the community, and they've actually come down to our community to also join in and play at the Festival of Sound and the powwows and things. So this has been my vision, and again, we're just so excited that this is happening in the community. A lot of people don't know yet, so I'm just happy to be here to raise some awareness. Let's see, so the benefits, of course, of music are, it reinforces self-esteem, social skills, positive attitudes, motivation, compassion, and our programs are really a healthy alternative to any destructive forces like alcohol, drugs, and suicide in Indigenous communities, but also just the Parry Sound community at large. Music is also proven to engage both sides of the brain where memory and language are processed. So the results are improvements in academics, especially math and language and reading. So we see that. We hear these stories and testimonials over the years of children that are really benefiting from our program. We see cooperative relationships and long friendships built among Indigenous kids, but also Native and non-Native kids. So it's just a wonderful bridge building program, and I really feel it stands in line with the Truth and Reconciliation. I can't remember what that's called, but it's Truth and Reconciliation. And I think this is at the very grassroots level. This is right in our community. The children learn and they play music together. And for all the reasons I've mentioned previously, we provide snacks which are donated after school. And some of these kids, they come and they haven't had a meal, or they've gotten up late for breakfast, or they've eaten their snacks at lunch and they're starving when they get there. So we provide them snacks, and then they play music for 2 hours from 4 to 6. So that's kind of how it's going. There's lots to tell you, and I know I'm really limited in time. What else can I say? So we need, yeah, it's a great program. So we have been running financially on private donations, and mostly private donations, to get us up and running this session. We only want to start it back up in the fall because we have the space donated until January of next year. So we have children now that have been coming, and of course they will want to come again. And we will have a deficit at the end of this by the end of the 1-week field camp, which again starts July 22nd. And our goals for the future would be to grow the program and maybe offer multi-generational programs so we can have adults and participate as well with the children, which would be awesome. So I would just like to introduce a couple of our students. We have a really strong mentoring component in this program as well. So I teach guitar and fiddle privately here in Parry Sound, and some of my guitar students now are coming to this program, and they're helping teach some of our Indigenous kids guitars. It's free. We have instruments that are part of our that have been in the program year after year. So I have instruments to provide for the kids, and we have Native or Indigenous children as well from Wissahickon and other communities that have been with us for 6 or 7 years, and they're also mentoring and coming to help and encourage the younger youth. So there's just so many benefits, it's hard to tell them all. But I'd like to introduce to you now Zaria and Eli. Now Eli started with us last summer. He only started playing the fiddle. He just turned 8 years old. And, oh, 9. I thought you told me it was 8. Okay, actually he just turned 9. And Eli goes now out to the gardens once a month with some other musicians that I play with, and he plays with us. So the opportunities for these kids to go out into the community then, once they're ready to perform, which they soon are, to seniors' homes and schools and churches and events. Just, I think it's just an incredible way to build community and make it healthy. So they're going to play a little song, right? Eli and Zaria, one of our teaching songs that we teach the children. Yes.
I wonder if we could get the kids to come forward and look into the camera so that folks at home could see them as well.
Sure, it's no problem for me. Okay, you guys. So so where is it?
Yeah, they need to be that way. Okay, we're good.
Thank you very much. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Were there any questions? No? Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Thanks, guys.
Next is reports, and we'll start with Councillor Burton tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Thursday, May 9th, I attended the regular meeting of the Industrial Park Board, and all is going well there. Tuesday, May 14th, I attended the Breakfast with the Mayor at Wellington's Restaurant, and that particular event is a fundraiser for the community living, and it was a wonderful event. On Wednesday, May the 15th, I attended the regular meeting of the Downtown Business Association for a little while. Unfortunately, I had to leave early. Things are shaping up, and these folks are working hard to get everything ready for the summer season. On Thursday, May 16th, I attended a regular meeting of the District Social Services Administration Board, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was at the same industrial park meeting as Councillor Burton on the 9th. We continue to hear from tire kickers about potential property acquisitions, nothing firm at this point. The one issue of some negative note is there has been a problem with the lagoon discharge system. Mr. Brown would appreciate this. The pipe is about 1 kilometer long with one manhole, and it's blocked someplace. There's a problem. Last Friday, I spent the afternoon at the airport reviewing the, for lack of a better term, the site plan with respect to the lot creation. That appears to be moving ahead reasonably well. We hope to be out to tender by mid-June with respect to that work. And that's my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann, and just click Councillor Burton's link there. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors and staff and people watching. Really organized here. Very short report here. This morning, I attended the monthly board meeting for the Parry Sound Public Library. We reviewed some governance policies, building maintenance issues, accepted the Treasurer's report, discussed the library's online presence, including our website, something that we're hoping to redesign later this year, likely in the fall, and our Facebook page, which has a reach of over 88,000 people. And so our CEO is in the gallery here this evening, Rita Orr, and she's asked me to just sort of pass along, and of course we have a resolution coming up tonight, excuse me, with regarding, we're talking about downloading and whatever you want to call it these days from the province. There's a lot happening with moving targets, and we don't know what to expect. So there's a lot of funding and a lot of issues regarding services that are coming and going, and some that are suspended and some of them that are brought back. And it's really beyond the control of the board of this library or any public libraries board. So we just want you to know that we continue to work hard at that, and Rita has commented on the fact that we've tried to save money with changing our lights and turning down the thermostat when possible, and adjusting our hours accordingly. So we continue to work at that, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed, and we're very optimistic, enthusiastic moving forward with the library in the next couple of years, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Horn.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, because of work commitments, I did miss the last two council meetings. I'd like to thank Council and Mayor McGarvey for designating May Community Living Month. Thank you very much for doing that. We've had a number of events over the last month. I'd like to thank Mayor McGarvey and Councillor Burton for attending the Breakfast with the Mayor last week, which was a great success. So we do have a couple more events coming up. A golf tournament tomorrow at Rocky Crest, and then a fundraiser May 30th at Trestle Brewery and Catherine Wheatley will be performing. So that's my community living hat. So now on to council. So I did attend a number of meetings going back to April Chamber of Commerce meetings, Bobby Orr Hall of Fame meetings. Just a quick update for Chamber of Commerce. Presently 279 members, and the Chamber is embarking on a new strategic plan and direction. So their key focus points for the new strategic plan, there are 4: membership retention and attraction, networking, advocacy, and governance. So stay tuned as the Chamber Board continues to develop their strategic plan. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I just have a few things. One is I had the experience again this year of volunteering to help raise money at for McHappy Day on May 8th for the Ronald McDonald House in Hamilton. And this time I got the pleasure of being able to take orders and be a grand receptionist and even make some change. So I got the whole money that for at least a moment or two. And as a result of that, again, I feel that every time I've had the experience that sometimes one may not realize how the pace is at a fast food type of restaurant, and how hard often people are working. So I really appreciate that experience, and I hope that I can have it again next year, again in a different spot. I also would say that as a result of the fundraising, they did give me a little note, and on it, it was a written statement by a young person who had the opportunity to stay at the house because the Ronald McDonald House, because of the illness they had, and how favorable it was and helpful to them. So I think often till we either get in that boat or one of our relatives, we may not have that issue, have a health issue. We don't realize how important those types of facilities really are for people. Next, I want to indicate that the last meeting I didn't mention about my attendance at the planning board, where there was 4 applications approved and the annual audit. And then finally, I got to eat, which was a good thing for me in that I got to sample certainly the food at DeSalvio's Bella Cucina restaurant, the new restaurant right in Parry Sound, and I have to say the food was delightful, and I certainly ate my fill, and I think it's again another venue that people will have in our community, and tourist visitors coming to Parry Sound to sample. So, and I think that the variety of restaurants is always good in a community because choice is always a fine thing, and it often gets people coming back. So that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council staff and public, May 8th to the 10th, I attended the Phenom Conference in Sudbury. It was a well-attended conference. Certainly the issue that Councillor Borman brought up was certainly front and center during that conference with regard to communication with regard to the government. There was a number of great topics that certainly come home to a variety of different issues that we are dealing with currently, and there were some that did have to leave due to flooding in their particular areas, Mattawa, Temiskaming Shores. There are, again, more municipalities and people dealing with flooding in certain areas that is still going on. So, you know, our thoughts are certainly out with them as well. Something that was unexpected is I ended up doing a interview on power and politics, so on CBC. So that was certainly interesting to do. May 14th, as was mentioned, the Community Living's Breakfast with the Mayor at Wellington's restaurant. Have to thank Mike Reeves and his staff for all of their effort putting into that particular event. and community living for all of their efforts in the community and being as inclusive as they are. One of the themes certainly for the breakfast was talking about the community gardens and you know, where it started a number of years ago and the number of gardens, community gardens that are in Parry Sound now, and they get snatched up as quickly as they become available. So certainly thank Community Living for their efforts and the other organizations as well that support the community gardens, you know, whether it's, you know, Parry Sound Nonprofit or the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve or Health Unit, yeah, all those organizations that come together to, you know, provide some space for healthy food growing. And 20% of the take from those gardens goes back to Harvest Share or Salvation Army for distribution to those in need. So I think it's a great community effort that certainly everyone should be proud of. May 16th was mentioned in the Parry Sound District Social Services Board meeting, and I will mention, because Councillor Burton was talking about, you know, getting business in and that sort of thing and people kicking tires. It's really good to see growth, and Trestle's adding 3 more kettles to double their production, so that's good news. Anyway, that's my report, and on with the rest of the agenda. Good? Okay. These 2 items were moved forward. Item 951, moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn. Whereas the Ontario Library Service North and Southern Ontario Library Service provide the support for interlibrary loans, staff and board training, bulk purchasing, collaborative programming, technological supports, shared electronic book collections, and shared catalog databases. And whereas the Town of Parry Sound supports the ESSA Public Library Board in their initiative to circulate a petition seeking support for the Ontario Public Library Board in their request for the reinstatement of funding to the Ontario Library Service North and South agencies to a minimum of the 2017-18 funding levels in order for these agencies to continue their day-to-day support of Ontario Public Library Services and to continue to maintain base funding for Ontario Public Libraries. Now therefore be it resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the office of MPP Simcoe Gray Jim Watson, MPP Parry Sound Muskoka Norm Miller, AMO, and the initiating municipality Township of ESSA. This also should go to the Minister of Tourism, Minister Tabola, as well, since they seem to be the ministry that's looking after libraries now. That could be, is that a friendly amendment to provide this to the minister? Council, all in favor? Okay. Discussion. Councillor Keith.
Yes, I just wanted to say, when I saw this resolution come across the iPad, it certainly seemed to me very important that we support this resolution. I think, as we've already heard earlier in the meeting, and we are aware there's been various cuts in different areas, but just because the cuts have occurred, we know there's an impact, and sometimes when decisions are made, they aren't always made with realizing the full impact. I think one of the things about this resolution is asking one at least to re-examine the impact. I know in just more recently, in contact with the Parry Sound Library, it seems that there has been a little bit more flexibility with the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and Sport, in that they've reinstated in respect to the interlibrary loan, that the postage rebate, they've reinstated it to the 2018 rate. But I think there's a bigger picture. That's good. That's one thing for at least 2018. But we're stretching the elastic band, and there's only so far you can tell people to stretch the band before it breaks. It's good that there's an opportunity here for people to re-examine how they can do things more efficiently, and that's all part of a good organization and a business, and how can you be more efficient with your money. So this is an opportunity. But to think that there still won't be impact even with creativity and efficiency, I think it needs to go back and allow the opportunity for libraries and the funding to be re-examined further. So I would suggest that and ask that we support this resolution.
Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2019-6928, being a bylaw to deem certain lots in the town of Parry Sound not part of a registered plan of subdivision, WEH lots 46 to 49 Winifred Avenue, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman.
I'm just hoping that perhaps Mr. Algie can explain to the public what we're up to here.
Certainly. Through your worship, essentially a deeming bylaw erases lot lines in a plan of subdivision and merges the lots into one conveyable parcel. So in this case, 4 lots will become 1. The effect is that, or the purpose being that I believe the applicant wishes to construct a show home on that lot and then divide them at a later date.
Okay. Anything further? No? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCann and second by Councillor Borneman, that whereas the Council for the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound approved Resolution 2014-030 and 2014-228 approving signing authority and credit card authority to members of council and certain members of staff, and whereas there are no changes to the position or authority levels at this time, and whereas there has been a change in the Director of Finance position, now therefore be it resolved Resolution 2018-026 be amended to formally remove Kim Chen, Director of Finance / Treasurer, as a signing authority, and further that Stephanie Phillips, Director of Finance Treasurer, be added as a signing authority. Discussion. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Direction, I need a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Borneman, Councillor Horn. The staff be directed to increase the price of interment rights only on the cemetery price list by 10%. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. That's efficient on the other side instead of 2 pieces of paper. Yeah. I need a mover and seconder for the next direction. Councillor Keith, Councillor McCann. The council approve staff to single source a new model vehicle for the replacement of the current cemetery vehicle 08-090 after no bids were received through the tender process. Discussion. Councillor Keith.
My concern is, even though we did not seem to have anybody come forth, I think we should put the tender out again and allow that opportunity, even with only a short turnaround time. I still don't feel comfortable with just going single source, so that's.
Councillor Borneman.
This is I guess a question for Mr. Brown. How widely was the tender circulated, Mr. Brown?
Through your worship, it was posted on our website as well. It was hand-delivered to 2 dealers in Parry Sound.
Councillor Borneman.
Well, I appreciate Councillor Keith. I hate sole sourcing and I appreciate her concerns, but on that basis, you know, there is a cost here to using up staff time and repeating the same activities. So on the basis of what we just heard from Mr. Brown, I'd suggest that we move ahead with this and find a vehicle.
Councillor McCann, and then we'll go back to Councillor Keith.
Okay, this is for Mr. Brown. Are there any particular needs or design for such a vehicle? I'm just wondering why it was so difficult to get some bids on this.
Through your worship, we've been using this type of vehicle for quite a number of years. It's a reliable vehicle for the smaller roads in town, the dead-end streets, the cul-de-sac, the single-lane roads. This is what we use to plow in the wintertime. And then in the off-season, or the summertime, it's used at the cemetery for moving material around, as well as equipment going from one cemetery to the other. So it's a very, very reliable piece of equipment that we've used, as I say, for many, many years.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Keith.
I guess I would say, if we were to postpone this, put this over to the next council meeting, and the dealerships in town be contacted to find out why is it that nobody bid on this. And I think it would be helpful for 2 reasons. One is maybe we'd know in the future, is there an issue with the process? And number 2, could it be there's a poor filing system? I don't know, but I just think that it wouldn't hurt to put it over at least even 2 weeks and just to find that.
So, Councillor Keith's asking for a postponement, so I have to ask if there's a seconder for the postponement. Councillor McCann is seconding that. So I'm going to call the vote on this. All those in favor of postponing it? Those opposed? It's not postponed. Mr. Brown, you had a comment? Good. Okay. All right. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? There's 1 opposed. It's carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, second by Councillor Borneman, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound approves the Fire Department Health and Safety Policies attached as Schedule A, and further that upon the agreement of the Parry Sound Fire Department Joint Health and Safety Committee, the CAO and the fire chief are authorized to make changes to the policies attached to Schedule A to ensure that they remain current and in compliance with occupational health and safety standards. Discussion. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, second by Councillor McCann, that Councillor Blank be appointed as the mayor's designate for the purposes of Lakeland Power shareholder meetings. Councillor Borneman?
Volunteer to attend that meeting, Mr.
Okay. Any question on that? No? Okay. All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Let's see, moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Horn, that council appoint the mayor, Councillor Blank and Councillor Blank, and the CAO, Mr. Clayton Harris, to the town's negotiating team regarding Seguin Township, Town of Parry Sound boundary adjustment. I think we should have our planner in on that as well. Am I missing? Oh, yeah, I saw it there. I just didn't know whether we wanted it in the resolution. No? We're okay with that then? Okay, all right. Okay. I need two councillors. Councillor Horn? And I've got Councillor McCann and Councillor Borneman with their hands up. Okay, anyone else then? I've got Councillor McCann and Councillor Horn. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Burton and second by Councillor Borneman that bylaw number 2019-6924 being a bylaw to adopt the estimates of the Board of Management of the Downtown Parry Sound Business Improvement Area and to strike the tax rate thereon for the year 2019 be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw number 2019-6926, being a bylaw to strike the tax rates for municipal purposes for the year 2019, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings, and that's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that bylaw number 2019-6925 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw is amended for 32 Riverdale Road, LaForme/Hubert, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Is there any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Yes, for Mr. Algie, if you could explain what this is about.
Certainly, through your worship, this bylaw is just to permit a secondary dwelling unit in the building, as well as reduce the length of parking space sizes from 6 meters to 5.4.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith, that bylaw number 2019-6927, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5089 to delegate certain powers and duties of council under the Planning Act deemed complete and be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having second and third readings? And that's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor Keith that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. LG. So what is this about, and does this have anything to do with giving the township more autonomy over its official plan?
Through your worship, this is only about deeming zoning bylaw amendments complete, and official plan amendments complete. So essentially the Plan Act requires that when those type of documents are submitted, certain information is required. And in 2007, council delegated to my predecessor's position the ability to deem it complete. Since I started, I've been deeming it complete until I recently realized the bylaw spelled out development of leisure services. Does not have anything to do with additional powers being granted from the province. It's merely housekeeping.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. It's just kind of stuck there. Okay, good. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that bylaw number 2019-6929, being a bylaw to appoint Ulysses Gibson as a municipal law enforcement officer, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2019-6930, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Burton, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that's carried. So, prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information regarding the next council meeting. Next regular council meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, June 4th at 7 p.m. and will be held in the council chambers, top floor of 52 Seguin Street. Public access to the building is off Gibson Street. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Regular and special meetings are now live streamed. Please check news and public notices on our website at www.parrysound.ca for instructions to watch live or to see earlier council meetings, agendas, changes to the council meeting schedule, and notices of special council meetings will be posted on the town's website at www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices prior to a council meeting. The public is able to view an electronic copy of the complete agenda with attachments on the town's website. Just search council calendar and the date of the meeting. Should you wish to receive the combined agenda via email, you may make that request on our website or contact the clerk at the municipal office. The minutes of the council meetings will be posted within 2 days after the council meeting on the town's website and on the bulletin board located in the municipal office entrance. Your TV will continue to air the regular Parry Sound Council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. And everyone have a great night. Thank you.